Thanks a lot, guys, for putting this CASP workshop together. I hope that you and everybody on the call are doing well and staying healthy. As Tom mentioned, I'm Sebastian Saa. I'm the senior manager of ABC. I get to oversee different research projects and different research portfolios. And today, what I will be talking about is the yield components. To be honest, it's a topic that I find fascinating. It's a topic that I used to work on it when I was doing my PhD at UC Davis with Patrick Brown, Ted Dion, or Bruce Lampinen. And then it became one of my research lines, important research lines when I was a professor. And now I get to still enjoy this topic through the different research projects that we're doing, because as you will see through the presentation, it's a lot of horticultural components and a lot of management components that are connected to what I call the yield equation. So with that said, I would like to say that normally, when we are in person and in the orchard, I usually start my presentation by asking you to raise your hand and answer, the question that you see there in your screen, like what are the factors that define almond yield in a given season. Of course, I cannot do that exercise now, so what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to use my mental power. So instead of you answering, I will ask you to think about the answer. So, yep, think a little bit. What are the factors that define almond yield in a given season? Great. I can mentally see that some of you are thinking about that, but I see some of you that are a bit distracted. So let me give you a hint. Okay, there's a picture there. Okay, I think most of you kind of get it by now. That picture there gives you a big clue for at least the first factor of the three factors that define almond yield in a given season. The number of flowers. Exactly. The number of flowers is one of the three factors that define almond yield. The second factor, let me see, 1 second. There. The second factor that defines almond yield is the percentage of fruit set. And the third factor is the kernel weight. And you can rearrange these three factors in an equation that will help you to better understand how your trees produce the yield that you're looking for. In fact, I'm convinced that this equation can help you to better evaluate your almond orchards, discover their limiting factors, and act accordingly. So the factor looks like this one. I mean, the equation, sorry. You can see here the left yield potential. So the maximum amount of pounds per acre that you can get in a given season, it's equal to the number of flowers that you have in your orchard at the beginning, times the percentage of fruit set that happens right after, and times the kernel weight that you obtain. So let's put it, for instance, some numbers here. If you would like to, or you produce 4,000 pounds per acre, you're probably looking into a kernel size of 28 kernels per ounce. So this translates, I already did the math for you, 28 kernels per ounce, it's 0.0022 pounds per kernel. And if you want to get 4,000 pounds, probably you're looking into a final fruit set of 28% or so. So if you have 28% of fruit set and you have a kernel weight of 0.0022 pounds per kernel, and you are getting 4,000 pounds per acre, that probably means that you need about 6.5 million flowers per acre. That's a lot of flowers. And there you are. There you have a number that you can use to give justified answers. If you have somebody asking you how your yield look for this season during bloom in early March, you may say, well, I don't know, I didn't have the chance to count 6.5 million. I don't know if I had 7 million flowers or 6 million flowers. But I guess what I'm going to is that more important than the actual number, I'm convinced that it's really important to know what are the managements and what are the factors, or the technical factors, the horticultural factors that govern or that direct or rule out these different numbers, these different factors. So, and that's what I'm going to be trying to cover in the next 30 minutes or so. We're going to talk in detail about the number of flowers and then move to the percentage of fruit set and the kernel weight. So to talk about the number of flowers, the way, in my view, the number of flowers, it's a game of numbers. So of course, the more flowers that you have, the better. But it's also a game of quality, where healthy and fertile flowers are no question more likely to set fruit. And so to play this fascinating game, I think we need to understand from where those flowers come from and how they are developed and what are the factors that affect both things, the number of flowers and their quality. So regarding the number of flowers, most of flowers are developed on compacted shoot no longer than 2 to 3 inches structures, which we call almond spurs. You can see there on your screen, almond spurs are these compact shoots, as I was saying, 2 to 3 inches. They are the main bearing structure of almond trees. More than 80% of your fruit in a mature almond tree comes from these structures. Here in this zoom in, you can see those are flower buds around, so 1, 2, 3, 4 flower buds, and a vegetative bud in the middle. And it is this vegetative bud that is going to allow the spur to survive and keep growing through different seasons. And that's also, by the way, that what gives the good-looking structure to our almond trees during bloom. You can see here a beautiful blooming time with that sort of like a lot of spurs on the branch and somehow a rosette configuration with a lot of clusters of flowers blooming. A little bit more of the anatomy and physiology of these spurs. So these spurs, here you can see in the cartoon, they are developed in 2 years old wood or 3 years old wood. So there's one there, there's another one there, and there and there. But the point I'm making here, it takes a couple of years for the tree to develop these structures. So first, it has to grow a shoot, and then that shoot, it's going to incorporate those spurs of the following year. And once it flowers, of course, it sets fruit. And you can see that's probably when you walk your orchard, those are the structures that you're looking for, or that you are seeing. A spur with a nice leaf area there that is able to support the growth of that fruit. So again, spurs are compacted shoots, no longer than 2 to 3 inches. A mature tree produces about 80% of their total yield on spurs. And flowers depend on spurs that are at least 2 years old. So once we understand this, and now that we know that spurs are these fundamental structure to produce fruit, I will say, ideally, so if we want to win this game, I think that there is no question that we would like to have as many spurs as possible, and as many of them flowering and bearing fruit. I mean, who wouldn't like to have this sort of timeline where you have a lot of spurs at your left? Those spurs have very nice flowering buds, and they look like that once they flower, and then you have a lot of fruit set. So I would say that's the dream. Unfortunately, there's not such a thing as free lunch. Our studies in this area have shown that a significant amount of these spurs will die or not bloom from one season to another. So in other words, that means that the spurs have an alternate bearing structures. Now, let me illustrate that a little bit more with the next slide. So individual almond spurs go into alternate bearing habits. That means that one year they produce fruit and the other year they don't. So an individual spurs have an on year and an off year. That's illustrated here in these pictures I'm going to show you next. So for instance, here, the 2020 season, you see an almond spur, a one-fruiting almond spur, producing fruit this season. And then it's very likely that at the following season, that same spur is going to be resting. It's going to be in an off year. That's very basic knowledge and very interesting that help us to better understand how a tree is working. Because now you know that you have spurs that are producing fruit in a given season, but also you have spurs that are resting, and they are going to be the spurs that are going to be responsible for the production of the following season. So there are more key physiological things that happens on these spurs. I will say the other phenomena, it's the almond spurs are likely to die after bearing multiple fruit. That's what I tend to call a little bit the black widow phenomenon. You can see it here in this picture. You can see a spur that with two fruits, with very hungry fruit, that actually feed from the nutrients and from the leaf area and from the carbohydrates that those leaves were producing to a level that was so high that it produced the death of those spurs at the following season. So I tend to see like the fruit and eats and kills the spurs there. So again, two concepts to understand this spur behavior, these spur populations. You have fruiting spurs that go into alternate bearing, and or if they have too much fruit, then they tend to die. So even though it is sad to see, I will say, almond spurs to pass away, I think that this basic understanding of how a tree works is quite interesting. This basic knowledge provides a totally more advanced way to look at an almond tree and understand it. Now you know that when you are walking through your orchard, you have different spur populations. You have a population of spurs that is non-fruiting spurs, this one, and you have a population of one fruiting spurs or multiple fruiting per spur. And you can think about these populations as a portfolio of investment, for instance. And you can think that your tree should have a diversified portfolio of investment, where these fruiting spurs are your short-term investment. These fruiting spurs are the ones responsible to produce the yield for this current season. While this non-fruiting spur, it's your long-term investment. As you walk through this season, you are looking into those spurs because those are the spurs that are going to be responsible for the following year fruit load, for the following year yield. So it's as you walk my invitation here is to identify these populations and have what I call a balancing act between the different spur types. I do think that the key for abundance, the key to maintain high yields, and not only in one given season, but across different seasons for multiple years, is to have these different spur populations active and in balance, meaning that you want to have, when you walk your orchard, you want to have a rate of spur being formed through new growth that overcome the rate of spurs that are dying. So as simple as checking for new growth and try to get a sense. If a lot of spurs are dying, then the tree should be generating new growth to recover those, generate new populations. So as a population dies, a population is being formed, a population of new spurs. Your current yield, as I was saying, largely depends on the spurs with fruit. This one, your short-term investment, while your next year yield will largely depend on the spurs without fruit, your long-term investment. So keeping a balance of a lot of spurs with fruit is going to give you good results for this current season, but also a balance with a lot of spurs without fruit for this season is going to give you the good yield for the following season as well. So how now that we look at trees this way, what are the horticulture tools, or what are the horticultural inputs or management approaches that we can take to maximize these spur populations or to keep them in balance? Or what are the situations where actually we disrupt this and we break the balance, and that brings negative consequences to yield production? And that's what I'm going to talk next. There is no question that nutrient, for instance, the nutrient management has a direct effect on a spur population. That's one of the many drivers that affect the size and performance of your spurs. And I brought a couple of examples for that. first example is the one that you can see here at the left of your screen, where you see a zinc deficiency shoot. This is a shoot that has a small pale leaves, short internodes, rosette leaves given to low zinc concentration. Then this results in reduced shoot growth. And because you're going to have reduced shoot growth, then the tree has less space to develop spurs. So your population of new spurs being formed, it's negatively affected in the long term given to this zinc deficiency. Here's another example. In this example, it's when you apply nutrients in excess. Luke was talking about water and how water affects whole rod. I'm going to talk now how nitrogen affects whole rod. So we have seen that excess of nitrogen results in higher whole rod susceptibility. You can see that in this picture, where whole rod, by the way, this pathogen that enters through the fruit when they open, when the holes open, this fungus enters to the fruit and kills the spur, produces a toxin that kills the spurs there. And interestingly, that toxin is able to drive back through the phloem up to 2 feet and kill neighbor spurs. So by applying too much nitrogen, you increase the susceptibility of whole rod. That fungus produces that toxin, kills that spur, and it can even kill spurs farther away. So you are negatively impacting your spur population. You are negatively impacting the yields, not perhaps for this current season, but for future seasons. So I guess the message here is that to keep balance, performance, and high performance spur populations, you should follow the 4 R's of plant nutrition. They stay for applying at the right rate, the right time, and the right source and the right place. So the right amount, for instance, the right amount of nitrogen when the tree needs it, with the fertilizer, the right fertilizers, and where the roots are active at the right place. For that, we have our, as Eric was mentioning early in this talk, our California Almond Sustainability Program, where you can find the nutrient pattern calculator for more information. So that's an example of nutrients affecting your spur population. How a very basic knowledge translates into a very applied practice. Let's cover another one. Let's now cover irrigation, the other aspect that Luke and Tom were talking about. And I really like how irrigation can interact with the different spur populations, because honestly, it does it all year round. Here, in a spring, for instance, you have shoot growth. And you know that in the spring, the machine is growing, the tree is growing. And what is developing is this 1-year-old shoots. So if you if your management in irrigation is inadequate, meaning either applying too much, as Luke was saying, or applying too little, you will have negative consequences in the overall tree health and in shoot growth, which then at the following year, this structure is going to be too small. And then the number of spurs that you're going to have is going to be lower. So a reduced canopy size. And we know that that's also connected to a smaller canopy size, smaller yield at the end, yield potential. So that's in the spring. That's how your irrigation management affects your canopy size in the spring. As you move through the season, probably where we are entering now, into early summer, irrigation management also has huge impact in kernel size. Remember, think about the fruit as in the first stages as a balloon. You know, you have in March and April this balloon, which is mainly the hull getting air inside and reaching full size. And then by the end of April, beginning of May, it's the physiological things switch a little bit from putting air into this balloon to putting kernel weight into this balloon. So now it's the process and that's where we are right now in the season. We have already probably reached full size in terms of fruit size, but now it's the expensive process that starts to take place. Is when the carbohydrates and all that energy start to enter into the fruit, and start to develop the embryo, the kernel that we eat. And we have seen in our study that stress, water stress at this time of the year or a little bit in early summer has a detrimental impact in this third factor of the yield equation I was telling you, kernel weight, kernel size. This was a study that we performed where we say there was a significant water stress in May. And you can see in the picture clearly that the water stress plants were the kernel from there were 20% smaller than from the control. Well, that of course translates into a 20% less yield in the current season. So water, so far I've shown you, has a long-term effect, as you may have problems if you don't irrigate well in the spring, but also could have a very short-term effect impacting your current yield. That's why water management and all the management that we do is so dramatic, because it doesn't only affect what we see today, but it's also affecting what we see tomorrow. As we move from early summer to late summer, there's something very interesting going on as well. There is something going on in these spurs. Those spurs that were vegetative, those spurs that have leaves only, start to develop those flower buds, you can see there. So that's what we call flower induction, flower differentiation. That's what is happening at the late of the summer. And sometime August and September, depends on the variety, the tree already starts to decide how many flowers are going to be developed for the following season. How many flowers are going to open in February, March next year. So, and we have seen that during this process, the formation and the number of those flowers that it's formed is connected to your irrigation management as well. And remember, I said one thing. I said flower the game is a mix of numbers, but also quality. And here I translate to the later part of the season, where your management in early fall, during harvest or later after, right after it, your irrigation management will affect the quality of those spurs, the quality of those flowers, the amount of energy that they are able to storage into these perennial structures and use it at the following year to bloom and have healthy, strong flowers. So I like this picture here because it's showing what I call a smooth leaf senescing process. You can see this is right after harvest, and the trees are going, or right about to be harvested, and the trees are going through what I call a smooth leaf senescing. There are yellow leaves there are green leaves, and most importantly, the trees won't look like they have no leaf at all after harvest. And that's what when I see, I get a little bit worried about, because so many times I understand there's a lot of things going on during harvest, and the ability to put water back on and the ability to promote this smooth leaf senescing is restricted. But believe me, promoting good smooth leaf senescing will help from those green leaves to become yellow. And they become yellow for a reason, because that green color is the energy, is the chlorophyll, it's the nutrient that gets translocated from the leaves into the spurs to have healthy flowers at the following season, strong flowers. So again, irrigation management is key all year round. And again, check the CASP irrigation calculator for more information in this area. Okay, so number of flowers, again of number, I talk a lot about that. Let me talk a little bit more, as I was talking about the quality of these flowers. So in terms of quality, irrigation management and overall tree health is key for the formation of strong flowers, as I was just telling you. So with irrigation, and it's the same with other practice, you don't only usually affect numbers of flowers, but you affect the quality of those flowers. So keep those factors in mind. Other practical examples here, nutrients. Again, research from in part funded by our portfolio in the early 2000s, late 90s, showed that boron had a key role to adequate growth of the pollinic tube. A little bit of anatomy here. So this is a good looking almond flower where you have the anthers, that's where the pollen is, and this is the stigma, that's where the pollen needs to land, and then once the pollen lands, it needs to grow a pollinic tube to fertilize the ovary. So here you can see that kind of like magnified. So here you see the different pollen grains, and you can see how some of them tried to grow a pollinic tube, and one of them was successful, while the other ones couldn't grow. Boron plays a key role, regulating the speed of that growth, so and allowing it at the same time. Regulating so that when the pollen actually touches the oval is still fertile, the oval is still viable, and therefore you can have a successful fruit set. So boron plays a key role for quality. Recently, we have seen through micro X-rays pictures with a cyclotron, where we see how zinc, the element, accumulates into the antheras, into these pollen bags, that and then helps to promote cell division early in the growth stage. So enough, I will say, about number of flowers. Let me now move to the second component, and in this last 10 minutes or less, I'll try to cover these other two components. So let's talk a little bit about fruit set, percentage of fruit set. And I think there is no question, and it's nicely illustrated in this picture, that the fruit set begins during flowering. But as many of you probably know, doesn't end once flowering is over. Flowering is just the beginning of fruit set. And that's what some of us call early fruit set after flowering is done. But final fruit set is really reached after the natural drops that occurs in almond trees. So it's, to be more precisely, occurs by the end of April, first week of May. It's at this stage, today, this week, the following few weeks, when we reach final fruit set. So let's talk about some key aspects that affect fruit set during bloom time first, and then some post-bloom events that are worth to discuss. So during bloom, the percentage of fruit set is largely affected by factors such as flower quality, the one I've been talking so far, where you are looking for very good, perfectly formed flowers that are quite viable. You're also looking in almond for adequate cross-pollination between the variety and the pollinizer. And here is actually a good photo from Joe Connell that illustrates the opposite. When we don't select the right variety for the right location, with the right combine it with the right pollinizer, you may have situations like this one, where you have the pollinizer way ahead of the blooming time of the variety. No cross-pollination, much lower chance to set fruit. Number of healthy and strong flowers. Another good picture from Joe, where we can see a very strong hive and a very weak hive. Strong hive because it has 9 frames covering, meaning that it has enough power, enough heat to keep the hive warm inside and go out and let some bees go there and work and pollinize. While in this other one with 4 frames, the bees will never leave the hive because otherwise they will die. The hive needs to keep certain heat. So even if you have nice weather conditions here, with 4 frames, it's very unlikely that the bees are going to be working at the maximum capacity. And the last aspect, I will say, weather conditions. And what I recognize that the weather, there is no much probably we can do for the weather conditions to mitigate weather conditions or problems like frost, etc. There is a lot, I think. There is a lot that we can do if we play a very proactive role into to tackle the weather conditions. I mean, there's a lot we can do before we plant. There is a lot we can do by correctly analyzing the location, the weather characteristic of the location that I'm looking for. Once I really understand that, select the best variety and rootstock combination with its pollinizers or not, that is gonna be able to work well under the weather conditions that I'm facing. So yes, weather condition. Once you plant, there is little you can do. I recognize that, but before plant, I think there is a lot we can do, especially with the range of varieties and roots that we have. Okay, so that was a little bit during bloom. Now let me discuss just one concept about that affects fruit set post bloom. And here I'm talking about the fruit drops. Almond trees have 3 distinct stages of fruit drop. The first of this stage is shortly after bloom, when the effective flowers fall from the tree. The second drop occurs about a month later, when pea-sized flowers, mostly unpollinized, fall. You can see that one there in this picture. And the third and final drop occurs 6 to 7 weeks after bloom. That's the one that it's going on right now in your orchards probably, and it lasts for about 2 to 3 weeks. So you can walk your orchards now, and you can see that third lot falling. That third fruit drop is what we call the load adjustment. That's when kind of like the trees, the almond tree and fruit trees in general have this drop. That's when the trees are kind of like sensing how much load they have, and they tend to, what I will say, take a conservative approach and drop whatever they think is too much, and they won't be able to fit through the season. So this is what it's the adjustment for crop load. So in years like this one, where we had a very good condition for fruit set, the tree may go into higher fruit drop, into a higher third fruit drop. That said, I think a combination of factors actually affect the third fruit drop. And I think, again, some of them we can control, and others not so much, like the weather. If we have a lot of cloudy days and so on, those are things that are going to play in favor of more fruit drop, which, of course, we don't want that to happen. But also, we have seen that poor fertigation affects fruit drop. So if you fertigate poorly, you get more fruit drop. In a more positive way, if you follow the 4 R's of plant nutrition and same with water, if you use the water, the CASP calculators, and if you are able to irrigate and fertigate according to the tree demands, when it's needed and how much it needs, then you are able to mitigate this drop. And I agree, there is no question, there is a direct correlation. Low fruit set equal low fruit drop. High fruit set equal high fruit drop. And this season, we know we had a high fruit set. So it's likely we're going to have a high fruit drop. But our trick to win this game as good horticulturists is to use our tools to break this correlation, so we can have a high fruit set with a low fruit drop. And I'm convinced we can do that with good management. So a tip for you here, I invite you to walk your orchards, check some branches with your hands, grab some branches, some scaffolds right now, and observe how much of that fruit falls. I usually do it every year. They fall on my head, and when it hurts more, it's because there is a big drop this year. It's a very cool exercise that you can practice. Okay, just a couple of words to wrap up here about kernel weight. So kernel weight, I would say, it's as the season progresses, and the game is a function of number of fruit left on the tree and the size of your kernel and of your individual kernels. Your management focus into maximizing those kernel size, into providing the right inputs to the tree so the tree can do its job. Here, the plane is on the air, and you enter in a pilot mode where you still need to provide the right inputs like water, nutrients, pest management, control, etc. at the right time with the right source, etc. But I think it is definitely a time where your good management in the spring start to pay off. If you did, if things were managed correctly, if your irrigation and fertigation during the spring and your pest management, integrated pest management approach was handled correctly, then you have a very strong and a very high performance machine, which is we call trees. I call them machines. And these machines are very efficient to harvest light, and let them do their job. Here, you're a facilitator here at this time of the season. You allow that machine to collect light and to harvest that light. So in the spring, they grow, they develop this beautiful structure. The machine is at max, and we let it play at its maximum performance. By doing so, the machine is capturing all that light, converting that sun energy into biochemical energy that translates into kernel weight. And therefore, we have those beautiful kernels that we harvest at the end of the season. So provide the right amount of water and nutrients combined with an integrated pest management approach that maximizes kernel sizes and advising. And overall, as I was pointing at the beginning, it's the whole suite, is the whole box of toolbox of horticulture management that drives and affect the yield equation. You just need to understand the basics, and that's what I'm trying to share with you. There's no coincidence that we like to take pictures in orchards like this one in the middle of the summer, because orchards like this one in the middle of the summer that have a total shade of 80 to 85%, meaning that they are intercepting 80 of the 85% of the sun, of the light that comes from the sun, are high performance orchards, or results show us over and over that these are the orchards that have the highest yield potential. Look how healthy they look. Look how our investments in the spring are paying off. Look how happy those trees are harvesting, and hopefully how happy we are going to be as once we harvest. So in summary, the yield potential, again, number of flowers, remember 6.5 million flowers, but most importantly, how to produce those flowers, what affects those flowers. Same thing with fruit set, 28%, 20 to 30%. What are the factors that affect the healthy quality of those flowers and the fruit drop? Kernel weight, how you can, through good management, through good irrigation, through good nutrients, through good pest management approach, you can facilitate kernel weight. So remember, the number of flowers is a game of numbers and quality. Identify your spur populations, aim for a balancing approach. Keep in mind that flowers are formed during the previous summer and that their quality largely depends on the nutrient and irrigation management. The percentage of fruit set bloom is just the beginning. We have little control on the weather once we establish an orchard. However, we still have a big influence on fruit set by promoting bee and tree health and reducing fruit drop with good management. Kernel weight, help the tree to do its job. Help the tree to do its job. Harvesting light and producing carbohydrates. Supply the horticultural inputs, nitrogen, water, IPM, integrated pest management approach at the right time and the right amount for the tree to perform at its highest efficiency. When working your orchard, think about the yield components to take informed decisions. Aim to maximize each of these factors through efficiency and precise management. I'm convinced that this will result in more sustainable yields and in an environmentally friendly approach where everybody wins. And with that, I cannot see the question, but that's the end of my talk.